Thank you for tuning in once again to his Vine and Fig Tree podcast. I'm coming to you in the evening of September 10, 2025, and I apologize for video in the evening. That's the way it seemed to work out today. But I'm just doing three things here very quickly that I want to bring to people's attention. The first one is the shooting today of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk. Um, when I was in college, there were a variety of other groups that that focused on reaching college kids with conservative ideals. We had Young Americans for Freedom. You had uh, obviously college Republicans, but a variety of groups that did that when I was in school. Turning Point USA comes on the scene, and they have some significant impact with college kids. And Charlie Kirk was the brainchild of this. He obviously latched on to Trump in 2016, and that kind of continued with um, things that were happening even currently. He was a big Trump guy. Um, and probably 90 to 95% of the time, I agreed with the stuff Charlie Kirk did and said. Um, and I found out about the shooting in the afternoon while I was occupied doing some things. And my children brought it to my attention. And I was following some things, and it looked like word was coming that he was stable and he was surviving. And then the next thing you knew, it flipped on its head, and we were hearing that he had passed. And I mean, the good news, Charlie Kirk had already answered the question, "What am I going to do with Jesus Christ?" That question was answered, and that's the most important question anyone can ask themselves and answer. But let me just say some things here about where the as things stand here Wednesday evening. um, the FBI does not have the shooter, and I find it hard to believe that no one in a crowd that size did not see the shooter. Um, and that person will probably have the death penalty thrown at them when they're found. But and I don't like being in this position, and I never would have guessed that in my mid late 50s, I would be saying this about the country where I grew up and the country that I love. But we're at a tipping point, folks. And this event could very well have been that thing, especially when you combine it with the second thing I'm gonna talk briefly about. Um, this is We don't know a motive yet, but it's hard to come up with a conclusion other than the fact that it was a political assassination. Um, and because someone didn't like uh, Charlie Kirk and what he stood for, that justification for what someone did. But I don't see anything good coming from this other than Charlie Kirk being able to enter the gates of heaven upon his death. I've seen some things from people who this email group that I'm connected to, And some of those people have spouses and friends in the medical profession. And these people communicated with the group that when they saw the video of where he was shot, they think he died instantly. So I don't know where the rhetoric and the news was coming that he was stable and that it looked like he was going to pull through. Um, uh, because I read something here this evening that indicated that when someone's spouse called and said X, Y, or Z about the Charlie Kirk thing from a medical perspective, they started crying because they didn't see a scenario where someone could survive something like that. So, that out of the way. But we have had years now, years, with very careless rhetoric in our politics. And we get it occasionally on the right. So it's not exclusive blame on the left, but the left accuses every Republican under the sun of being a Nazi. They accuse them of being racist. They accuse them of being fascist. They accuse them of every phobe, whatever the phobe of the day is, transphobe, Islamophobe, whatever. And this rhetoric and this continued rhetoric isn't healthy. And worse, you get these left-wing progressives that go to TikTok and celebrate what happened. That's an ugly look. That's an ugly look. And then it's worse when you go to MSNBC and they have a host saying, "Well, it could have been a Trump supporter just shooting off a gun in the air." And I'm not aware of that happening at all at any of Trump's rallies. And then they had a guest on that, basically saying he brought this on himself by the kinds of things that he says. And I'm like, wait a second. Wait a second. Let's back this bus up. We've had people that have been we had a shooting at the Family Research Council in Washington D.C. that took the life, I believe, of one security guard. Um, we've had other things. We had the shooting at the congressional baseball game a number of years ago. We've had a variety of things that have happened directed at the right, and no one from the left. And I don't care if it's James Carville and Van Jones and uh, some of the sane voices that they might have to whoever. No one gets called on the carpet from their own on the left when this heated rhetoric just continues to boil and boil and boil on a pot that no longer has any water in it. And I just I just don't think I think we're at a tipping point. And I don't see a lot of things good happening from this. And I know people. I've talked to a few people here personally who I know are Christians or right of center in their political leaning, and they have the same kind of gut reaction to this. And uh, our country needs prayed for because with this person now on the loose, what's stopping them from attending some Trump rally somewhere and taking a shot at him or someone else from the cabinet or members of Congress, you name it. And when does the madness stop? When does the madness stop? And all of this also comes at a time when we have this image in our heads right now of this black guy, DeCarlo Brown, on the Charlotte Light Rail System, um, standing over, you know, a a Ukrainian refugee didn't know he was there. Then all of a sudden, he makes a move, and she's now cowering in her seat, and she's killed. And not a single word was said except in the Charlotte media for 2.5 weeks before we had images that emerged on X because some TV stations had 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 sought um, video footage, and some of that then emerged on X. And the left in this country for multiple years now has sanctioned you can do whatever's right in your own eyes. You can do whatever crime that you want. You can land in court and they're going to let you out. That's what's happening in blue states. I live in New York. I know this to be true. And I just I don't see anything good coming from this. I just don't. And when you have the thing that happened in Charlotte is kind of a precursor to some of this stuff. Now the shooting in Minnesota at the school, we had a school shooting today in Colorado outside a school. Um, just some crazy things are happening, and none of it's good. And none of it's good. And um, so those two things I wanted to immediately just put out there because they're really critical to understanding the times in which we live, the political rhetoric that's been going on and everything. And the last thing I want to share with you is something that came on Monday. And it is the low view of capitalism that we have in this country. We have just 50 some percent of Americans that have a favorable view of capitalism. And we have heavy numbers of Democrats, medium numbers on among independents who don't have a high view of capitalism. And I blame public education. I blame secondary education in the high schools. I blame higher education in at the college setting, and the constant attacks that we have even in our own country on our way of life. And capitalism has done so much around the world to lift everyone's boat so that they're in a better spot than where they would have been otherwise. And now I have my own thoughts on capitalism, and even that comes with boundaries and people with a conscience. I don't. One would argue that one of the byproducts of capitalism is greed, and I would say, well, greed only happens when someone is engaged in capitalism without a conscience, and they're selfish, and their sin nature is getting the better of them rather than their moral compass that says, I need to be a good boss. I need to treat my employees right. Eh, Go down the list of things. And then when you are then at an investing level, I need to take responsibility for how I'm being a steward of my money and how that looks before God. So, um, those three things were really screaming at me in the early part of this week. Obviously, the one just happened today, but for that situation to unfold in Charlotte, just being in our news cycle in the previous 36 to 48 hours before this thing happened at Utah Valley University is just shocking. And the timing was just unbelievable. And there's a lot of people who have a lot of accountability for some things. And I'm not disqualifying any responsibility on the right, but for a long time in this country, the left have operated under one premise: if I disagree with you, I get to destroy you. And that has manifested itself in a lot of things. And now, both in 2024, with a couple attempts on Donald Trump, and now this thing with Charlie Kirk, bad, bad. If you are a praying person, you should be praying for not just the safety of the leadership of the president's cabinet and the Congress and leaders nationwide of both parties, but you should also be praying for uh, just this person or these people being caught quickly, and that justice, legitimate justice, would unfold. That's where things stand. Um, Dropping another column on Sunday, um, something totally unrelated to Charlie Kirk and these events. Um, and we are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. This podcast is about freedom and liberty, and we can't have political assassinations in a country that is supposed to be free. These two things don't go together. They just don't. And um, stay vigilant, stay focused. If you're a believer, stay prayerful. And until next time, God bless and goodbye.